Hello and welcome to the 3 Championship Drive podcast hosted by me, Lance Caporossi. Back at it after a hiatus for a couple of days. Just had to sit back, relax, reevaluate, and then get back behind the microphone. And that's what we're doing tonight. Not a whole lot of news, really virtually at all. I think we're going to talk about Jalen Duren for a second because we haven't talked about him in a few episodes. And it's for me personally, Jalen Duren's making me nervous. He's making me nervous because not that I don't think he can't be replaced, because I think he can be. It's just right now, this late into the offseason, he's a huge piece of the Detroit Pistons' offensive identity. And he hasn't, I don't know if he's missed a whole lot of time. I don't know if he's sitting out or not, but it's still just a distracting thing going on right now. It's a distraction. I don't know how you go into work every day and just be cool with the boys on the team. Like, I don't understand that with this all hanging over everybody, because I'm sure, and we don't hear about this, but I'm sure these guys get asked and bothered about Jalen Duren quite a bit when they're out and about. And I'm sure it would get exhausting to them. Like, there's probably hundreds of other things they would rather talk about than Jalen Duren's contract. And the other thing, too, is I don't know what news to believe when it comes to any of this anymore, because earlier in the offseason, we get this news that Cade Cunningham was actively recruiting Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, and all these other stars to come to Detroit. And then he comes out and says, no, I've never done anything like that. I don't recruit players. Like, I leave that up to the staff to go ahead and do that. It's just so funny because, like, there are so many accounts now, like, because of social media, we all have access. We all can say whatever we want. We can all masquerade as someone that we're not either. And it's just so confusing because I don't know if I'm reading just like an opinion piece, actual news, or news that's manipulated because of older news. I just don't know anymore. So I'm just going to go with it. So this guy, Brett Siegel, he tweets out, and again, he's pretty much the guy I'm talking about. I have no idea if this guy's legit or not. I hear that he's good, and then I hear that he's not. And I'm just still on the fence with this guy. And what I'm saying is, like, he's taking older news, and he might be manipulating it to make it sound like it's current, up-to-date news, and that's what this post reads like. But I feel like it's just old news, but we're going to talk about it. He said, no team has approached the Pistons since Summer League inquiring about a Jalen Duren sign and trade, because all the signals have been that he will be back in Detroit for the 2026-2027 season, per Brett Siegel. Okay, that's great. Yeah, I don't know where he would go without there being a sign and trade. So, like, again, that's what I'm talking about. This stuff is just, he'll be back in Detroit for the 2026-2027. Yeah, unless a sign and trade happens, we all know that Jalen Duren will be back in Detroit. He literally has no other options. It's either the sign and trade, sign the extension, or sign the qualifying offer. Regardless, he will be in Detroit unless there is a sign and trade. That's the only way he's leaving Detroit. So it's not really news, but I was thinking about this, and it got me thinking, like, does Jalen Duren have any value? Is he valuable to other teams outside of Detroit? And I don't think we're in like some golden age of centers in the NBA right now. I definitely think we're at a more skilled time in the NBA than any other time in the NBA. But it's not a golden era for centers. But I was looking at teams, and I'm like, where would he go? Like, if nobody's calling about him, is it because he has no value, or is it because of something else, which I'll mention in a second? But I'm looking at the teams. Like, the Denver Nuggets aren't calling Detroit. You can scratch them off. Philly, they're not calling Detroit. San Antonio, no, not calling Detroit about Jalen Duren. Miami, doubtful. Sacramento, they've been reported to have signaled to Detroit that they were interested in a sign and trade with Jalen Duren, but probably not. Oklahoma City, no. Houston, no. Portland, no. Washington, no. Minnesota, no. Cleveland, no. Atlanta, maybe, because they have Onyeka Okongwu. They've been kind of waiting for him to break out on the scene, and he's been pretty good. And I think he just may be now the starting center in Atlanta. Then you have Utah. You have Milwaukee might be an interesting team. Utah is interesting because they got rid of Walker Kessler. They traded him, and they have Yusuf Nurkic and Jackson Hayes. That's their rotation in Utah, according to Google. So there's really not a huge market. And I left out teams like Dallas and Charlotte, New York, just because, I don't know. I don't think Brooklyn would. I think Brooklyn's happy with Day'Ron Sharpe anyway. But that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, this could go two reasons. Like, no team is actually interested in Jalen Duren because there's not really a market for him because every team seems to have a starting center in place. And really, when you look from the number one team, the Nuggets, to the last team I mentioned, the Milwaukee Bucks, it kind of seems like all of these centers fit to what their teams are doing. And I don't know this late in the offseason if they would want to try to flip things by adding a Jalen Duren and getting rid of their typical starting center. I just don't know. So I don't really think there's a market for Jalen Duren right now. So if you're sitting at home and you've been following along with the Pistons all offseason and you're like, you know what, I'm cool with this. I don't want Jalen Duren on the team anymore. Let's find a trade. I don't think they'll find a trade for Jalen Duren. I don't think there are teams out there that are center hungry when Jalen Duren maybe moves the needle on a bad team, but if you're a contending team, I don't know if he's the guy that puts you over the top, because if he's not getting touches and he's not finishing at the rim, he's not good enough defensively to carry that side of the court. So this is really, I just don't think there's value for him. But my other line of thinking was maybe there's not value for Jalen Duren, but every team now is sitting there thinking, why would we sign and trade for Jalen Duren when I read this news, I think he's signing the qualifying offer. So why would a team want to trade for him then? Why would they give up assets or a potential first-round pick or multiple picks for Jalen Duren when they know he's going to be in Detroit? He's either in Detroit on the extension or he's in Detroit on the qualifying offer. And when I read this news, my mind automatically goes to qualifying offer. Like, that's just what it says to me. Like, we're not getting calls, not because we don't think Jalen Duren's not valuable. We know he is. He's an all-star. He's an all-NBA third-team center. He played out of his mind last year. We get it. He's definitely valuable. But it's like, why would I trade? He's either signing the extension or signing the qualifying offer. That's it. That's all that it means to me. Like, I don't see how this ends up in a trade. I definitely see this either somehow the relationship gets back on the right tracks and they're just cool and they're all professional about this, Trajan Langdon and Jalen Duren and his team. Maybe they are. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it could be, because when things like this happen, someone leaves the room with a bad taste in their mouth. Someone leaves the room with, damn, I don't know if I got enough, or maybe I overpaid. That's the only thing. Me and my buddy were talking about this today, because he was saying his opinion is Jalen Duren will not be in Detroit by the start of the season. That was his. He didn't give me good enough reason why he didn't think Jalen Duren would be here, other than, like, he's just not a Piston. Like, I don't know what that means. I don't know if you're talking about the Bad Boys or the Going to Work squad. The thing is, those were many, many years ago. We cannot compare the modern day Pistons to them. It's a different brand of basketball. So I don't know what it means to be like, he's not a Piston. I don't know what that means. But that was my buddy's take, is he just doesn't think Jalen Duren's going to be here. He also thinks the relationship is sour too much. And he was a college basketball player. He's also a guy that played pro overseas for like a year or two. He didn't make a name for himself. I think it was in Turkey or whatever. But he said he's seen it before on a smaller scale. You know, you bring a guy over, things aren't going the certain way. He's not getting paid a certain amount. He feels like he's done enough for the team. He feels like he should be compensated. And then the relationship just sours. And it leaves a dark cloud over the team. Because there's some of the people on the team that say, you know what, maybe they'll treat me that way. And then there's a good portion of the team saying, you know what, they would probably treat me that way, but they ain't treating him that way. Like, it's so crazy how this dynamic has such a domino effect on people. But again, they are all professionals. I don't think a contract negotiation will destroy the team. I just think it gives them a black eye a little bit. That's all. It's a quick fight. Someone got hit, and we're all just sitting back waiting for things to get healed up. But his take, Jalen Duren not going to be in Detroit. My take, he will be in Detroit. I do believe he'll be on the qualifying offer. And I'm starting to think this is the last year we see Jalen Duren in a Detroit Pistons uniform. And I believe if he's on the qualifying offer that he would have to waive like a no trade clause to be traded. But let's look it up here for a second. Okay, I'm just going to read this for you guys. Yes, if Jalen Duren signs his 1-year qualifying offer with the Detroit Pistons, he can be traded, but he must be given his consent to the trade. So yeah, like I said, it's kind of like a no trade clause where they have to waive in order to be traded. So yeah, there is a chance that even on the qualifying offer that he could be traded, but his bird rights do not travel with the new team. That's kind of the caveat. So it might affect him. And maybe he doesn't waive the trade clause because that could affect his money down the line. This all is so stupid. I don't want to go back to when the Pistons were terrible. And I mean, I'd rather have these moments. But man, it is so frustrating. Like, it is so crazy to me that a 20-10 center, like, look, some guys, they benefit playing with a great point guard. That's just the way it is. Like, I mean, you look at Tyson Chandler's career, he had played like, I think, almost 20 years in the NBA, but he had like 5 years that really mattered where he was Defensive Player of the Year, All-NBA, and an All-Star because he was playing with a great point guard in Chris Paul. And then he went to New York, and then he went to Dallas where he won a championship where he's also playing with another great point guard. Like, some bigs, they thrive playing with a great guard. Jalen Duren, I don't know who's in your ear, but whoever is needs to tell him you thrive playing next to a great guard. You're going to have a great career. You're going to be remembered very fondly by playing with Cade Cunningham. And that brings me to their next topic. HoopsHype has named they did name their top 27 point guards, but this has been cut back to their top 15 point guards in today's game. And Cade Cunningham comes in at number 3. He's behind Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is number 1, and behind Luka Doncic, who is number 2. The only problem I have with this list is they have Darren Peterson at number 13. Wonderful player. I think he'll be solid. I think it's stupid to have rookies on lists like this. He has not played a meaningful NBA minute. Now, if this was a list of top 15 point guards based on age and where they were drafted and what the potential could be, yeah, I could see why he'd be on this list. But for top 15 point guards in the NBA, like, you think you're going to put a list out like this? We're not going to notice? Come on. But Darren Peterson comes in at number 13. I think it's incredibly disrespectful. I mean, there's no Drew Holiday. There's no Damian Lillard. There's no Kyrie Irving. I mean, I would put Peyton Pritchard in the top 15 before I put Darren Peterson. I would have no rookies unless it is an exact replica of Magic Johnson coming into the draft. Then I would make a case for him. But Darren Peterson is not Magic Johnson. I don't even know if he's a point guard. I was reading stuff where they think he'd be better off the ball, so I don't know. But I think HoopsHype, they're one of my all-time favorite basketball websites. But they get so frustrating sometimes with all this clickbaity stuff. But when I'm looking at the top 3 of this list, Shai, Luka, and Cade, I think it's more about, like, I think those 3, the difference between them all is just so minuscule that you pretty much are just picking your favorite flavor of ice cream. Like, what do I want today in my cone? Do I want a scoring guard that's great at getting to the line and is probably one of the most efficient players regardless of position in the NBA in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Do I want my offense being driven by one player in Luka who dictates and controls every single thing that happens on the offensive end? Do I want to play like that? Or do I want Cade Cunningham, who is a tremendous playmaker, and his game is I will sacrifice individual performances for the team as long as we win? Like, it really just depends. I'm not saying the other two would do that, but, like, that's how I look at them, and that's kind of the boxes that I put them into. And I'm not saying one is better than the other because I think they're all so close. But I would obviously go with Cade. as a Pistons fan. Like, I don't think it would still work with Shea or Luka. I think it would just be a little wonky. And I know Luka and Cade's game is kind of similar in how they play. And maybe Luka stepping into Cade's role wouldn't really be that big of a drop-off. And I still think Shea would probably play as an MVP with the Detroit Pistons. I just think the team would look different and the success would look different. I still think all guys would lead them to the playoffs. It's just I don't know if you're getting 60 wins on last year's team with anybody but Cade. And that's just because the team is unique with him running the show. And it's a different type of uniqueness than it is with Luka or Shea. That's why I say it. Like, they'd probably still be 55, 56, 57, 58 wins. I mean, maybe they would even be more. But looking at that last year's Pistons team, which was a step in the right direction, dude, Luka and Shea, they don't play with teams like that. Like, their teams are very specific and built to fit them and their skill set. And that's exactly how the Pistons are too. That's why I love these lists. I think they're fun. But I wish they would go just a little bit deeper into why they were ranking these players. And I would like for it to be partially based on resume, but partially based on what they do for their team. And, for me, when I see Shea at number one, I say probably the most productive, probably has the most wins in so many years or whatever they've been doing this. But then I look at it and I'm like, but if he's number one, does that mean are they saying he'd be number one for every team? Yeah, it's kind of how I'm looking at it. So I have one final topic, and we're going back in time. So we're going to jump in a time machine, and we're just going to talk about the Going to Work squad. We're going to talk about the best five alive. So I had another client come in today, and he comes in once a week. It's a haircut and a shave every single time. Hot towel, lather, straight razor, the whole 9 yards. So we have a lot of time together every week, like at least an hour, maybe an hour and 20, depends on, like, if he makes an appointment for 2, he's probably staying until 3:20 because I love talking to him. So we're sitting there and we're through the haircut. I turn him in the mirror, ask him how it looks, and ask him, like, okay, are we doing anything different with the beard? We're going to keep it the same. He's like, let me ask you. He's like, I love playing basketball. I don't watch it as much, but he's like, I know you love the Pistons. And he's like, but me and my brother, we were talking about this. I'm trying to imitate how he talks. But he's like, me and my brother, we're talking about this. He's like, because we lived on the east side for a little bit. We got to watch the Pistons live and everything when Ben Wallace was there. And I was like, okay, what's your question? He said, if you had to rank the best five alive in order of importance to winning the championship, how would you rank those 5 players? And I thought, this is pretty interesting, because if you've been listening to me for years, you kind of have an idea of how this is going to go. And some people will probably never listen to me again once I get through this ranking of the best 5 alive. But number one, in order of importance to the championship, I would have to say it's Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace is number one because the whole team identity was built around how he played basketball and what he brought to the floor. He brought defense and toughness, and he brought a certain rare intensity. You were going to build the team around what he brought. They had no true superstar. They had no true MVP caliber player, but they had the most valuable defensive player. The guy that was number one on one side of the ball, they had Ben Wallace, and they built that team around him. That's why he would be number one in order of importance to the championship. Ben Wallace is number one. Number 2 would be Chauncey Billups, because in order to win, they always say you need a great big. You got to play from the post to this. Well, you also need a great guard to run the show, and that's what Chauncey Billups did. He ran the show. No other guard at that time could have played with Larry Brown, bought into his system, and played the right way like Chauncey did. Chauncey, during those 2 years with Larry Brown, became the best version of himself playing with Larry Brown. This was not a guy that was out there taking chances or doing whatever. He was holding on to an NBA career when he came to Detroit. And he was just like, I got to do whatever I can to stay. And I think that's why it works so well with Larry Brown, because he probably didn't always like the process with Larry Brown. I'm guessing, but he probably didn't always like the process, and he probably didn't always like playing the right way. And there was probably things he could have done on the basketball floor where they probably could have put up a few more points, but instead he was patiently waiting for his opportunity to strike. That is why he is number 2. I've been doing research on the era of basketball from 2000, 2001 to 2009 to 2010 because it's my favorite era of basketball. It's when I started watching pro basketball. And I just forget how many great personalities and individual players were during this time. But I was reading something, and it's so crazy how the championship in Detroit happened. So if you know the story with Chauncey Billups, he gets drafted by Boston, 3rd overall pick, gets traded like 50 games into the season to Toronto. Then Toronto trades him, I believe, to Orlando, where he ends up being, I believe he was on the same team as Ben Wallace, but he never got any minutes in Orlando. And then in the offseason, I believe he gets traded again to Minnesota. Well, Minnesota has Terrell Brandon, who is a hell of a point guard, but he was always dealing with injuries. So Chauncey, after Terrell Brandon went out, Chauncey gets the chance to start. And people are like, man, this guy's pretty good. He averaged like 16-5 or 16-6. And he looked like a really good pairing with Kevin Garnett. It's crazy. And Kevin Garnett loves him. These guys are like boys. These guys are like best friends. They want to play together. Well, Minnesota says, we got Terrell Brandon, so we're going to pass on Chauncey. And, we believe Terrell will get healthy and he'll be fine. They didn't want to overpay. They didn't want to pay Chauncey at the time because they thought Terrell Brandon would come back. And they were just like, we just can't really afford to pay 2 point guards this kind of money. So that's why he signs with Detroit. It's just so crazy because if I don't know if maybe KG was more vocal, maybe if they just saw the tea leaves, maybe they saw the writing on the wall, but it's so crazy to me that you're just that championship in Detroit probably doesn't happen if Chauncey re-signs with Minnesota. I don't know who they would have got to be the point guard. I don't know who they would have got to lead that show. But like it doesn't happen unless Chauncey signs in Detroit. That's why he's number 2 for me. You could probably even argue for him being number 1 because he was the Finals MVP. It's just I have Ben Wallace number 1 because I felt like the team was built around what he brought to the team. It's funny too because when you look at that Grant Hill trade, like, dude, I was reading this too, and this kind of blew my mind. But like during the trade, the Orlando Magic offered Joe Dumars, Ben Wallace, or John Amici. Like, we don't care. Just take one of them. And there you got to think about this for just a split second. They did not have to trade Ben Wallace for Grant Hill. They did not have to do it. That was Joe Dumars just saying, we're going to take Ben Wallace and we're going to see if it works. But there's a real timeline out there where he takes John Amici and Chucky Atkins for Grant Hill because Ben Wallace, he was just starting to come into his own. Nobody knew what he was going to be. But Orlando didn't have to trade him to Detroit. It's so funny to me that I'm just reading about this era, and it's like all the Pistons stuff coming out. Like, there was another one with Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing, this was a 4-team trade, and I think it would have been the first in NBA history. Now, it still got done this offseason, just Detroit decided not to be a part of it. But Detroit was originally on, like, it was Seattle, Orlando, Detroit, and I'm blanking on the 4th team. But, like, everything was good to go. Patrick Ewing, I believe, was going to go to Orlando or go from Orlando to Seattle. I forget which one. But Detroit was included, and then Detroit decided, hang on, wait a minute. Who the hell are we getting in this trade? And, like, they were getting a bunch of no-names that had like longer term contracts for the era, and they're like, no, we're clearly getting screwed in this trade, and they decided not to. I thought that was fascinating too. Like, the NBA was a wild time back then. This was before anybody knew how to clear cap space, before they had, like fair contracts where guys weren't locked in for like a decade. Crazy times. So number 3, order of importance. I think people will disagree with me on this one, and I'm sure there's a small number that would agree, but Tayshaun Prince is the 3rd most important player. I can see originally when I was putting this together, I did make a case for Rasheed Wallace because it's like, dude, that championship, he puts the Pistons over the top. He was the missing piece for them to be a champion. because he gave you low post scoring, he gave you outside shooting, he gave you a different type of like tenacity you didn't have with the guys, and he gave you another big that could just play hella defense alongside Ben Wallace. Like, they were a great combination. But man, like, if Tayshaun Prince doesn't show up the year before and start locking down Tracy McGrady, maybe the Pistons go in another direction where they do draft Carmelo with the number 2. They don't get Rasheed Wallace during the season, and maybe they don't win the championship. They don't go back-to-back finals because they're still looking for that final piece. Maybe things don't go well with Carmelo Anthony. He's out of here after his contract runs up, and we're just championship. We have no superstar, and we're just getting ready to enter a rebuild. Maybe all of that happens that's why I say Tayshaun Prince is the third most important. If he doesn't lock up Tracy McGrady, if he doesn't play defense, if he doesn't block Reggie Miller, if he doesn't play defense on Kobe, none of it happens. So number 4 would be Rasheed, number 3 would be Tayshaun Prince. And number 5, and this is where I get a lot of ridicule, but when you're really looking at the best 5 alive, how are you going to tell me that Rip Hamilton's more important than the other guys? How are you going to tell me that? He didn't have a crazy isolation game. His game was based around movement inside the three-point line. Now, when you look back at his numbers, he was like a 24-4 guy, I think, for his career for the Detroit Pistons. Yeah, so for Detroit, he's 18-3-4 for his career. He had the 3 All-Star appearances in those 3 All-Star seasons. He averaged 20, 3.5, and 3.6. So, like, again, solid shooting guard. And really, his entire time in Detroit, he was just so solid. But, like, on that championship team, explicitly, he averaged 21, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, shot 45% from the field, 85% from the free throw line. So he was automatic. He was efficient as they can become. But it's always in the back of my mind, like, he could have been replaced. Like, the Pistons still win the championship as long as the other four. Like, are you going to tell me they don't win if, like, Reggie Miller's there in his spot? Do they not win if Kerry Kittles is right there? Like, I know Rip was a huge part of the offense, but I think they would have found more ways to score. Maybe Mike James takes on a larger role. I don't know. But I do think the Pistons still win even if they had replaced Rip Hamilton. And that's why Rip Hamilton is number 5 on in order of most important for the championship team. It goes Ben Wallace, Chauncey, Tayshaun, Rasheed, and Rip Hamilton. And I think those first 4, if you want to make an argument for Chauncey at number 1, I get it. I'm here to listen. If you want to make an argument for why Rasheed was either the 3rd or 2nd most important player, I'd give you the 3rd, probably wouldn't give you the 2nd, but I would still listen because who doesn't love these types of conversations? But I'll be damned if I sit here and you tell me Rip Hamilton was more important than any 4 of those other players. You will not convince me. You can talk until the trumpet sound and earth ends and human civilization is just turned into dust. You can talk to me and talk my ear off until you will never convince me that Rip Hamilton was more important than the rest of those 4 guys. That's my take, and that's how I feel about it. Thank you guys for listening to the 3 Championship Drive podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe, follow, rate, submit, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan